All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are so happy to have you here today and to have the FCC with us to learn more about the updated rules on E-rate eligibility. We're going to jump right in, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to the wonderful people at the FCC. Thank you so much.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Johnny Schreiber, and I'm the manager of the ERate program at the FCC, part of the Wireline Competition Bureau. And I have with me Kate Dumichel and Johnny Roddy, and Johnny will be giving the presentation today. And Sue McNeil is our bureau chief, but who will also be joining. And so I can turn it back to Melissa.
Okay. So Johnny, are you guys ready to get started on the presentation?
Yes, let me share my screen.
Wonderful.
We also have some people from ONAP who are also been very helpful in getting things going on with regards to the new rule changes. So we're very grateful to have them. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Johnny Roddy, and I am here to talk to you today about some of the changes that have been made to the E-rate program to enhance tribal library access to the fund, as well as to touch a little bit on the pilot program. So over the last 2 years, the FCC has made efforts to increase tribal library engagement in the E-rate program by providing more tribal outreach and tribal-focused training, releasing 2 orders making rule changes to support tribal library E-rate participants, and creating a tribal-specific assistance program, the Tribal Library E-rate Pilot Program. Today, we want to tell you about some of the most recent rule changes, as well as the extension of the Tribal Library E-rate Pilot Program. We also try to answer any questions that you might have. So, to start things off, we'll give a brief overview. The E-rate program provides funding to eligible schools and libraries to allow them to purchase telecommunications and internet services and the necessary equipment at affordable costs. The program's funding cap for the current funding year, 2023, is $4.768 billion. And last year, we had just over $3.2 billion in requests for funding. Eligible schools and libraries include both public and private kindergarten through 12th grade schools, libraries, and groups of schools and libraries. Groups include school districts and library systems, as well as consortia of schools and libraries. The E-rate program funds 2 types of eligible equipment and services. Category 1 services are services and equipment that bring connectivity to the school or library. This includes data transmission and internet access services. Category 2 services are the equipment and services needed to bring connectivity within the school and library. This includes internal connections, for example, Wi-Fi access points and equipment, cabling, routers, and other equipment necessary to have Wi-Fi throughout the school or library. Category 2 services also include basic maintenance of internal connections and managed internal broadband services, or MIBSs. I like to think of Category 1 in terms of the water line to a building, and Category 2 is the piping that moves water throughout the building, and the sinks and spigots that provide water access. The way E-rate program works is that eligible schools and libraries receive funding for 20 to 90% of the costs of the eligible equipment and services. The amount of the discount is based on the school's or library's level of poverty, whether it is located in a rural or urban area, and whether it is a Category 1 or Category 2 service. Currently, there's no set budget on the amount of funding that can be requested for Category 1 equipment and services. However, there is a 5-year budget for Category 2 services. The minimum amount of funding is $25,000 per school and library. And for larger schools and libraries, the budget is set on a per student or per square foot basis. Libraries receive up to $4.50 per square foot, which means that libraries smaller than 5,500 square feet end up qualifying for the $25,000 funding floor. Now, the E-rate program supports schools and libraries of all sizes and their individual connectivity needs. In some cases, a small library may only need funding to upgrade its Wi-Fi network equipment and to pay for its monthly internet service from its local provider. In other cases, a larger library system may seek funding for a more complex wide area network, that shares data and services among its library buildings. In addition, where it is the most cost-effective option, libraries and library consortia may request funding to build their own broadband network or seek funding for the special construction costs for services provided over a third party's network. While schools are a very significant participant in the E-rate program, since 1998, libraries across the country have received over $2 billion in E-rate funding, and we receive about 12,000 applications from libraries every year. In January 2022, the Commission modified the E-rate program's definition of library by adding tribal library, clarifying that tribal libraries are eligible to receive E-rate funding. Tribal governments can designate a library as a tribal library and can do this through, for example, a tribal resolution. Tribal libraries just need to have 3 basic characteristics of a library: regularly scheduled hours, staff, and materials available for library users. Tribal libraries may also work with the state library administrative agency where they are located. E-rate funding is available every year in what we call a funding year. The funding year runs from July 1st through the following June 30th to line up with the school year calendars. So, for example, funding year 2024 will run from July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. Applicants request E-rate funding during the annual application filing period, which generally opens sometime in mid-January and runs through mid-March before the start of an upcoming funding year. For example, the funding year 2023 application filing window opened on January 18th, 2023 and closed on March 28th, 2023. While the application filing window for funding year 2023 has closed, if you're interested in applying for funding year 2024, you can start planning now, as the FCC Form 470 that is used to request bids and start the competitive bidding process was made available on July 1st, 2023. We also want to let you know that tribal IT staff can help the tribal library complete the E-rate forms and also help conduct the competitive bid and vendor selection process for the tribal library. We have learned through our conversations with tribal library representatives that tribal IT staff, when they have the bandwidth, can be really helpful. And this is because tribal IT staff often know what network equipment is installed at the tribal library and what may need improvement. For example, if the cabling at the tribal library needs to be upgraded. The tribal IT staff can also serve as the contact person on the FCC Form 470 and 471 and can answer the often technical questions received from bidders about the tribal library's IT needs. So, if you have IT staff that would like to learn more about the E-rate program and what services and equipment can be funded, please let us know. We are very happy to set up meetings and provide information on the E-rate program and how they could play a critical role in the E-rate application process on behalf of the tribal library. We also have made a checklist specifically for new tribal library applicants, which can help get you started and also has additional resources and contact information available. Now, to talk about some of the new changes made to the program from the July 2023 order. In a unanimous vote, the FCC voted to amend its rules to enhance tribal library access to the E-rate program, both through simplification of the program and increased access to funding. The tribal E-rate order made some of the following changes, which I will go into more depth on in the following slides. First, tribal college and university libraries that act as a public library in their community are now eligible for E-rate. Next, Category 2 funding opportunities have been increased for tribal libraries. An exemption to the competitive bidding process has been created for tribal libraries seeking up to $3,600 in pre-discount Category 2 equipment and services. We also created a cost allocation safe harbor to simplify E-rate applications. Finally, we have added a tribal community representative to the USAC Board of Directors and adopted a definition of tribal for the E-rate program. Since E-rate's inception, funding was limited to elementary and secondary schools and libraries with budgets separate from any schools as a way to ensure the funds were not overdrawn. However, the tribal E-rate order has changed that, as tribal college and university libraries that also serve as public libraries can now apply for E-rate. These are the only college or university libraries to receive E-rate funding. We've been hearing that TCUs often play a really valuable role in their communities by providing library services, often being the only library in the area. We hope that by making E-rate funding available for these libraries, we will be able to help TCUs in serving their communities. Now, while funding will be limited to the library and not be extended to the rest of the campus, as long as the library meets the requirements of being a tribal library by having a dedicated library staff, regular hours, and a collection available to the public, they will be eligible to receive E-rate funding. As I mentioned earlier, Category 2 equipment and services are those equipment and services needed to provide connectivity within schools and libraries. Category 2 also has a 5-year budget, and as opposed to Category 1, has a maximum discount rate of 85%. In order to increase tribal library access to funding, the FCC has increased the maximum discount rate to 90%, meaning those libraries with the greatest need will receive a greater funding from the ERate program. We have also more than doubled the Category 2 funding floor 5-year budget from $25,000 to $55,000. This increased access and funding is only available to tribal libraries, which now also include tribal college or university libraries. Next, the ERate program requires applicants to seek competitive bidding for the equipment and services for which they're seeking funding. This helps to ensure that schools and libraries are receiving the best prices possible. However, the process can be complex and overburdensome for those applicants seeking limited amounts of funding. So, the tribal ERate order has created a new competitive bidding exemption for libraries seeking $3,600 or less in Category 2 equipment and services. A competitive bidding exemption already exists for those applicants that are seeking up to $3,600 in commercially available Category 1 internet service at speeds of at least 100 megabytes per second download and 10 upload. To put it less arcanely, a library can apply for up to $3,600 in internet equipment like routers, cables, and switches, as well as internet service at a cost of up to $300 per month without having to go through the competitive bidding process. We have also sought to simplify cost allocation. As mentioned earlier, ERate funding is limited to what we call eligible equipment and services, which you can find on our eligible services list, which we release every funding year. Now, cost allocation is the process by which applicants allocate or remove the cost of the portion of their devices and services that are ineligible. I like to use the extreme made-up example of a router/waffle maker. A router is clearly eligible and a waffle maker is clearly not. However, if this device is the most effective router, an applicant can still receive funding for the router portion of the device if they allocate out that portion or percentage of the cost of the device that is ineligible. This process can be complicated, and when applied to services like internet services, it can be increasingly complicated. So, the tribal ERate order created a new safe harbor for minimal ineligible internet service usage. If at least 90% of the ERate funded internet service is for an ineligible use, the remaining portion will presume to be ancillary and will not require cost allocation. While applicants will still need to seek funding for internet services that is best for their eligible use, ERate participants will no longer be required to separate out the de minimis ineligible use. What this means for libraries is that they will not need to separate out the costs of minimal internet use by ineligible users. Finally, the tribal ERate order has made some important structural changes that we hope will support greater communication between tribal communities and the FCC. First, the FCC, is adding a tribal community representative to the Universal Service Administrative Company, or USAC. USAC is responsible for administering the FCC's universal service programs, which includes ERate, but also rural healthcare, Lifeline, the high cost program, and the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP. USAC is a corporation with a board of directors made up of representatives ranging from a wide degree of telecommunications stakeholders and market participants, including telecommunications companies, internet service providers, schools, libraries, and low-income consumer representatives. For the first time since its creation, the USAC board will have a new member nominated by the tribal community to represent tribal community interests. This means that all the universal service programs that I mentioned will now receive the added value that a tribal community representative viewpoint will provide. Lastly, excuse me, based upon input from comments and from tribal consultations and listening sessions, the FCC has adopted the definition of tribal for the ERate program that will ensure tribal libraries are able to receive the new benefit created in the tribal ERate order. An entity is tribal for the purposes of ERate funding if it is a school operated by or receiving funding from the Bureau of Indian Education, or if it is a school or library operated by any tribe, band, nation, or other organized group or community, including any Alaska Native village, regional corporation, or village corporation as defined in established pursuant to the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, that is recognized as eligible for the special programs and services provided by the United States to Indians because of their Indian status. We also want to spread word that the Tribal Library ERate pilot program has been extended for the 2024 funding year. Last year, in coordination with USAC, the FCC offered a tribal library-specific assistance program that included group trainings as well as one-on-one assistance, with each participant being provided a specific contact person within USAC to help them complete their ERate application. As a result of that program, several new tribal libraries received ERate funding for funding year 2023, while others were prepared to apply for ERate funding in future years. This past July, FCC Chairwoman Rosenworcel announced that the program would be extended to funding year 2024, the current funding year. More information about the program will be available soon. We hope that we will be able to help even more tribal libraries apply. In the meantime, please reach out to us at native@fcc.gov if you have any questions about the pilot or ERate more generally. Thank you, and please let us know if you have any questions.
Right. Thank you so much, Johnny. Now time for questions, right? Any other, let's see. All right, so we have one question in our chat right now. Does this include Head Start and Early Head Start programs?
So eligibility, yeah, I can talk generally about this. I think John A knows more about this than I do, but eligibility for schools is based on the state that the school is located in. So there are some states where Head Start is eligible in an elementary school for ERate, but others where it is not. I don't know the state by state laws. I think there is something there may be something on the USAC website. But if you want to reach out to us, we can also look into it. I see a question about, will the tribal university be required to filter content? So yes, under the so it depends on what you're requesting. If the tribal college or university library is requesting internet access or any of the category 2 services or equipment, so that would be internal connections, which is the equipment such as like wireless access points or cabling, managed internal broadband services, which is like managed Wi-Fi, or basic maintenance, the ERate participant is required to comply with the Children's Internet Protection Act. And so the authority with responsibility for administration of the school must certify that they would be enforcing an internet safety policy that includes measures to block or filter internet access for both minors and adults. I know there probably is guidance out there on for libraries on SIPA, but applicants who are only requesting telecom access, so like a data transmission service, do not have to certify compliance with SIPA. Yeah.
I know, I was like, I'm happy to help facilitate questions or however I can help.
It's hard for me to read and speak, so if you want to.
Well, I'm happy to bring him out to you if you want, so if that's easier.
I'm not a good listener, so I have to read them. Sorry. Is there an eligibility for tribal libraries that are already connected via tribal government internet? So we have heard this in other instances where tribal libraries get their internet through the, sort of tribal government situation. And so the idea of sort of competitively bidding all of that over again and breaking out just the tribal library portion, it could be done, but is perhaps too complex or not worth it when you consider all of the internet access being used. But in that instance, there still is category 2 funding for ERate, which is this funding for sort of the equipment and services that you use within the tribal library. So, if you're ready to do an upgrade of your Wi-Fi network, ERate funding can be used for that as well. I think individual eligibility questions like this one about from Ruth about Pawnee Nation College. Feel free to contact us afterwards. I wouldn't be able to answer it on the spot about eligibility. I think there will be slides available afterwards. How will libraries, including tribal libraries, need to document that they're making a cost-effective selection when requesting the Category 2 bidding exemption? So this is basically the order stated that if you're ordering $3,600 or less in equipment, in C2 equipment in 1 year, then you do not have to go through the ERate competitive bidding process. And, you know, that's designed to make it easier that you don't have to file a 470 and you can sort of just work with, well, you have to work within your state and local guidelines, but if possible, you can sort of work with a service provider to figure out what works best for a certain piece of equipment. But that we would not expect to like reimburse a piece of equipment that costs $200 and pay $3,000 for it, right? So the order sort of maintained the existing guidance that the equipment has to be cost effective. I think we've had past orders that say like a piece of equipment that's like available that's being requested for 2 to 3 times what is available on the market might not be considered cost effective. So that's just sort of a past example. I don't know. I don't know if any documentation would be required up front. It would be more of just like making sure that what you're selecting is sort of within the normal range of costs. I see a question about Alaska Native serving institutions and Native Hawaiian institutions, and that they are not included in the tribal colleges. I would have to get more detail about that. I'm not familiar with the sort of the distinction there, but feel free to reach out to me or anyone else afterwards. There's another question about, could this funding be used to equip tribal school buses or tribal fleet buses with Wi-Fi? Currently, ERate limits eligibility to the campus of the library or school. There is actually an item that is being considered by the commissioners of the FCC related to school bus Wi-Fi, but it has not been voted on yet, so it's just under consideration at this time. So right now, school bus eligibility, school buses would be ineligible. There are, for libraries, there are bookmobiles that sometimes are eligible. It sort of depends on whether or not it's like actually a library, but feel free to reach out to us if you have questions about bookmobiles as well. IT discussed the possibility of creating an array of memory for backing up storage video. We have access to cloud memory, but excited about using memory array. Have to say, that is not something that is on our eligible services list, but if you have more detail about what it is, you can feel free to reach out to us. Caching servers are eligible, but this doesn't sound quite like that. I'm not sure. So you'd have to, you could reach out to USAC or to us and we could try to figure it out. ALA does have some SIPA advocacy links. Lisa Sutherland notes that there are a number of Alaska Native villages where they would not be able to apply over the internet. Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth looking into whether there's like a E-rate eligible school that you could use their internet, or I don't know what the solution is here, but we did in 2014 transition from paper to electronic applications, and it has vastly improved the quality of our data and application processing. Bill Micklin asks about the costs of provisioning or deploying broadband to unserved tribal libraries. And does this mean all necessary costs? What is the broadband definition for these purposes? So the E-rate program does fund special construction to schools and libraries, and in fact offers additional discounts if a state, federal, or tribal authority is willing to match the additional discount for special construction, sort of recognizing that there can be schools and libraries where even that, small discount, non-discount share might be too much in these construction cases where there's nothing there. The services and construction need to be competitively bid. So if you are thinking about doing construction, it's probably worth reaching out to USAC and sort of making sure that you ensure compliance and do the competitive bidding correctly from the get-go, because I think that's the most challenging part. As far as the broadband standard, this is reaching into my memory. We have a standard for schools that is based on like a certain bandwidth per student. And it's a goal. It's not a requirement that you hit a certain number. I think for libraries, again, it's somewhat aspirational but in terms of it, in terms of the E-rate program in general, we defer to the school or library to make the assessment of what is needed for them to be successful, and then competitively bid for that service, and hopefully get bids and be able to continue on. Relatedly, does E-rate cover for the initial infrastructure if new lines need to be brought to the building? So yes, the special construction to the building is eligible for E-rate. We have another question about determining needs. We have found that one of the challenges for smaller libraries in particular is determining what they need. And perhaps Johnny or Jenny could help me out with this. I know that during our pilot program last year, we were able to sort of help try to connect people with a team that could help them with like needs assessments. It isn't something that we at the FCC or USAC do, but I think we are recognizing that like trying to connect people to the right sort of the people who could help them figure this out earlier is better in terms of the sort of like long wind up to the E-rate funding year. John A. added a link to the non-traditional entities like Head Start eligibility. So some states include pre-kindergarten and Head Start students within their definition of elementary education. Lillian Chavez, eligibility requires tribal council resolution for establishing the library in their tribes. What are the specific requirements? And is there a form or document to present to the tribe for resolution? Yeah, so you could have a tribal library that becomes designated by the tribal council resolution. That is one way you could do it. You can also work with the State Library Association to determine eligibility. We have, I think, seen some resolutions that folks have done, but we don't have a specific form. We don't, it's sort of just up to the tribe on how they do it. Lauren Abner included Chairwoman Rosenworcel's announcement about the proposed Learning Without Limits initiatives that does include the school bus Wi-Fi item that's being considered by the other commissioners. We did have a question earlier about using ERate to provide public Wi-Fi. I'm not sure exactly if that is meant to be public Wi-Fi within the campus or off campus, but libraries can provide public Wi-Fi within the library building and the general campus of land around the library. Off-campus use is ineligible for ERate discounts. So we had the Emergency Connectivity Fund program, which sort of funded services off of the campus. But I think, again, if you look at the Learn Without Limits initiative, there's discussions being had. The statement that Chairwoman Rosenworcel put out, there's statements about, whether the commission should consider changes to that. We need assistance with the current ERate application. Lauren Abner suggests the state coordinator could help with reaching out to USAC. If you also have sort of a specific question about the application, you can reach out to the USAC customer service or you can also, if you're a tribal library, you can also reach out to the tribal liaison at USAC. I'm trying to see if she's on. Her name is Jem Liberta. It doesn't look like she's on, but if you email tribal-liaison@usac.org, she can sort of help answer questions or point you to the right person for applications. Did I miss any questions?
It looks like, thank you for everything. Yeah. I know Johnny said he actually had a slide that has all the contact information for all of you. So Johnny, do you want to go ahead and share that now so that people have time to write down the email addresses if they need to contact anyone? And this information, the slides and the recording, will be sent to you later today so that you can refer back to it if needed. Do we have any other questions?
This is John A. Schreiber again, and I just wanted to note that Bambi Cross, the chief of ONEP, who's listed here, is also on the call today, along with her colleagues, Lloyd Collar and Derek Boatson. And also Kara Bowes, who's an associate bureau chief, and the Consumer and Governmental Bureau is also on the call today from the FCC. And so I just wanted to let everybody know that our colleagues from CGB are also on the call today and participating in this meeting, and the contact information for Bambi and her colleagues are on this page as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Janae. All right. Do we have any other questions? If not, we just thank everyone for being here today, and you should receive later this afternoon a copy of the presentation. If not, feel free to reach out to us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.
Hello.